Well, our team is standing by with the top list of stocks that they're watching for. But first up, we would like to do the RBI draft rules on housing finance companies. They're draft, but important. So first, let me invite my colleague Ritu Singh to just put the rules on the table, and we have a guest to explain whether they will impact the stocks. Ritu, go ahead.
Well, many proposed changes. Some of the key ones are that housing finance companies cannot lend to the builder and the buyer of the same project within the group. Their exposure to real estate companies at a group level has been capped at 25%, 15% for single entities. Commercial real estate exposure also capped at 20% of capital fund. The minimum capital requirement will gradually be increased from 12% to 14% by next year and to 15% by 2022. At least 50% of the net assets must be in qualifying assets, which will exclude things like loans for furnishing and for purposes not linked to buying or purchase or renovation of residential units. Systemically and non-systemically important housing finance companies will be classified. Housing finance companies that currently do not meet this 50% net own criteria will also be given time to comply with these guidelines. And lastly, net own funds will gradually be increased from 10 crores to 20 crores.
Okay, Ritu, thank you very much. But you may want to stay on and listen in to our guest, Mr. V.S. Rangan, the Executive Director of HDFC. Good morning, Mr. Rangan, and thank you very much for taking our call. You know, the point where Ritu started, what do the draft rules say? That if you lend to, for instance, Lodha Group, you can't lend to a person buying a house in New Cuf Parade? Or does it mean HDFC can't lend to New Cuf Parade building when it is constructed and the person buying a house there? I didn't get that bit. Mr. Rangan?
Yeah, so I just couldn't listen to you the next part.
Okay, no, is it to the anybody? Yeah, is the law that you can't lend to any Lodha? I mean, Lodha cannot be a borrower from HDFC.
My understanding of this part of the circular is that this is actually in relation to the group. If suppose there is an HFC and there is also a construction.
Okay.
If there is a construction arm within that group,
okay,
and if the HFC is actually lending to that, because it is talking about the group entities related to the HFC.
Okay.
So what it means is, suppose let us say I'm just taking for the sake of this thing, there are HFCs which also have a construction arm, either within the same setup or within the group setup. Okay. So there they are basically saying that you can't take a double relationship. That is what they are saying.
All right. Say maybe then
it is not for
maybe Piramal in that case. You can't lend to both Piramal for building his construction projects and to his housing finance company. Is that what you're saying?
No. Suppose there is a housing finance company of a group and they also have a construction arm.
Okay.
So what they are saying is that if you are lending to the construction arm, obviously there are limits and all that stuff on that. Having done that, if you have done that, then you cannot go and lend further down to the buyers in that project also, because then it amounts to a sort of a double this thing.
Okay. On this issue or any other issue, are you going to ask for a change because the Reserve Bank has invited applications?
So let me just brief you that these provisions which have been put out more or less on this, yesterday, a lot of them actually exist in some form or the other. For example, if you look at let us say this 51% qualifying assets. The HFCs have been taking refinance from NHB, and as a part of that refinance, if you see the condition, one of the covenants in that refinance is that the HFCs will maintain a 51% exposure to individual housing loans on the total assets. So that's a condition which is already there in the refinance which is availed by the HFCs from the National Housing Bank. So this is not very different from what the current covenants are there for most of that. We have been following this for many years. It is not there in the main regulation, but it is there in the one of the covenants of the refinance.
Mr. Rangan, if I may interrupt, is there anything in the rules which are different from what is being followed and which may be a problem for some HFCs, not necessarily only for HDFC? Which is that one rule we should look out for?
I would say that this one is this eligibility condition for some of them which have a larger, sort of a wholesale book, vis-a-vis the retail book.
Okay.
There this could come in some way in terms of, because now it is talking about recognizing the institution as an HFC. What I was telling you was more in the context of availing a refinance from the NHB. So this is one I would probably look at. The second is that, from a capital adequacy perspective and all, we are anyway progressing towards that 15%. So that is in any way there. And the LCR guidelines, they are now coming into application here, which was directly not there in the earlier this thing. Although everybody was aware that this will come in at some point in time, and people are getting ready for that sort of a new environment. So net, I don't think there is a major shift. On the deposits, they are talking about, currently the regulations being 3 times of the net worth and NBFCs have a cap of 1.5 times the net worth. So, but if the net worth and the capitalization of the HFCs are very high, I don't think that makes a huge difference to this thing.
So, sir, this maintaining 13% deposits in liquid assets for a company like HDFC, it may not matter because you have maintained your SLR balances much above the requirement. But does this impact any of the other housing finance companies at all? I mean, will they be able to meet the criteria?
I think if you look at the overall deposit, I think deposit accepting not all the HFCs are actually accepting deposits. There are few HFCs which have been licensed to accept deposit, but the amounts are not very large actually there. Most of them actually resort to bank borrowings or from the market and things like that, on which SLR is not required. Obviously, you'll have to maintain an LCR, not an SLR, but an LCR. See, ultimately, you'll have to maintain a cash balance against all your liabilities in one form or the other. Whether you maintain it as an SLR against a public deposit, or you maintain an LCR and corresponding liquidity coverage ratios on other liabilities, it comes in one form or the other. It's not that you're totally there is some liability on which you don't keep anything at all.
All right. Okay, Mr. Ranga, then finally, if these draft rules become rules, will you or any possible HFC face a pressure on margins because you have to keep more idle liquidity?
See, the liquidity aspect has been there from, right from the time when the IL&FS crisis started. People have been keeping much more liquidity than what the things are. So even if you look at us, we have been keeping far higher liquidity than what we have been keeping on, even on before the crisis started, actually, before the COVID started. So that way, I think liquid. If you see the financial results of most of the housing finance companies, that reflect the higher amount of liquidity which has been maintained. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We leave it at that, Mr. Rangan. More or less, looks like the status quo has been continued.
I just wanted to say that most of these provisions they remain in the statute in some form or the other, or they were expected to be there.
Okay.
For example, if you look at the reserve requirements on the public deposit, I think the gap is not very high, and people know that you are at 13 and you will have to graduate to 15. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Fair enough. Then it's not a shocker. It's just putting all the rules in one place. Thank you very much, Mr. Rangan, for joining us. Okay, so that was the housing finance. We wanted to check because they are such a big part of the NBFC space itself. Now let's proceed with all the important stocks that our team is watching. Anuj, you start.
Yeah, Lata, you know what, I just want to talk about an important issue in the sense that, we've been talking about how the market's been taking a pair trade over the last couple of months of selling Titan and buying Muthoot Finance. And I think that's now visible in the numbers. If you see the numbers of Muthoot Finance, the point I'm trying to make here today is that today will be interesting to see the reaction in two stocks, both Manappuram and Muthoot. My sense is that we have seen already a big run in Muthoot, and at 1,000 plus, if it opens 3 or 4% higher, there will perhaps be temptation to take some money home because it's had a one-way run from 700 to where it is right now, and perhaps even though the earnings quality is slightly worse, some money perhaps moving to Manappuram purely on valuation factor because it's trading at almost half of the valuation of Muthoot. But Muthoot's numbers are very good, that nobody should have any doubt about, and that's the tailwind that it has got. After that, I'll watch out for Britannia. Now remember, Britannia, after the great numbers, hit all-time high and then corrected 10%. Yesterday